Hi! Welcome to this part of my review featuring the Heroes and Hardships core rulebook. This is the early access version. If you haven't seen the other parts of my review featuring this universal RPG system, please check out the playlist in the description below. You will also find links to the website, to the Tetsubo section of the website. Tetsubo is an upcoming setting based on Japan's Sengoku era. You're also going to find links to the Kickstarter that is currently in the stretch goals. You will find links to the Discord and to my reviews of the Quickstart guide and the Wallace campaign setting, based on the life and exploits of William Wallace. So please check it out. Now let's continue. This time we are going to talk about combat. Combat is a deadly enterprise and should never be taken lightly. Combat is second nature in other role-playing games and sometimes never feared due to generous amounts of hit points. Engaging in combat in Heroes and Hardships may end up with your character dead or severely wounded. That being said, sometimes combat is unavoidable, and many specialize in these deadly skills to prevent their own demise. When it comes to combat basics, Heroes and Hardships uses the same basic system in combat that it does with all other skill checks. Characters will form dice pools, apply benefits and hardships, add pre- and post-roll modifiers, and determine levels of success. There are more details when combat occurs, but the basic premise of rolling is the same. Remember that in Heroes and Hardships, there are no hit points. The main factors of determining characters' health are injuries and wounds. Let's talk about the combat scene. Heroes and Hardships does not use a combat round concept. In this system, combat should be considered a sort of timeline. Characters will be moved along the line with each action they commit, taking a certain amount of action points or APs. These APs represent an abstract amount of time. If you'd like to measure time in combat, consider each AP to take 1 second to complete. Each time a character acts, this is considered the character's turn. The longer it takes to complete an action, the more APs it requires. Characters committing to quicker actions will act more often than those using actions that cost a greater number of APs. Let's talk about initiative. When combat starts, each character makes an initiative roll. Initiative is determined by a reaction skill check and modified by any benefits, hardships, or modifiers. Initiative signifies the character that initially acts first. Each character makes the first action in order based on their initiative rank. If there is a tie, compare senses first. Whoever has a higher senses attribute acts first within the tied characters, and proceeds in order if more than 2 characters are tied. If there is still a tie, compare the reaction skill rank and proceed as with senses. If after comparing both senses and reaction there is still a tie, roll 1d10 for each character still tied until there is a tiebreaker. The highest roll is the winner. Let's talk about the combat track. After initiative is rolled, the order of the first turn is set. When a character chooses their combat action, they note the AP cost of the action. When performing the action, they move down the combat track the number of APs that action costs. Actions will continuously increase AP ranks past other characters on the combat track. Characters may not start their action before a previous character's action completes, unless stated otherwise. When it comes to tracking AP, there is no one way that you can track AP at the table. However, all characters' APs must be visible to every person at the table. This includes NPCs controlled by the Game Master. It is very important to track others' APs in order to plan your own actions. The easiest way to track APs is for each character to write down their character's current AP and place it in front of them. The Game Master must do this for each non-player character involved in the combat. The Game Master can also do things such as creating circular punch-outs with different numbers or even placards with the totals displayed. Tracking APs can be as easy or as fancy as a group wants to make of it. And during online play, it can be systematically tracked by whatever virtual tabletop or program is being used. You can also use the AP tracking table included in this book. You place the character name under the name, their current AP under AP, and their rolled initiative under initiative. Make sure to use a pencil as the AP value will change often. You cross off any defeated enemies and keep this table accessible to all players for quick reference. When it comes to melee combat, Heroes and Hardships attempts to simulate combat and gives many options for actions to be used in such conflicts. There are several actions that apply attacking or defending in different ways. Discussion on each specific action is not required to understand the general principle of combat. During their turn, a player can attack by targeting a character who then defends. A player that wishes their character to make an attack determines what sort of action they will use. This character is now identified as the attacker. Once decided, they can determine what dice pool to form based on the offensive action and skill chosen. The attacker makes a skill check including any benefits, hardships, or pre-roll modifiers as usual. The total of this skill check is called the base attack value, or BAV. The character immediately advances down the combat track, a number of APs required based on the offensive action selected. Let's talk about hit locations. You view the rightmost digit of the base attack value. This determines the hit location. For arms and legs, if the number is odd, the attack strikes the left appendage. If it is even, the attack strikes the right one, obviously. Striking different parts of the body can also cause more or less damage. Striking the head increases the post-roll modifier of an attack by 5, after all potential reduction has occurred. Striking the legs or arms decreases the post-roll modifier of an attack by 3, after all potential reduction has occurred. You have a table showing you the hit locations. There is also an optional rule to make head strikes deadlier. Let's talk about defending. A player that controls a character that has been targeted with an attack may make a defensive action. Once a specific defensive action is chosen, the defender forms their dice pool based on the defensive action and skill chosen. The defender makes a skill check, including any benefits, hardships, or pre-roll modifiers as usual. The total of this skill check is called the base defense value, or BDV. The character advances down the combat track, a number of APs required based on the defensive action selected. When it comes to resolution, you subtract the base defense value from the base attack value. If the result is 0 or higher, the attack is successful. If not, the attack fails. The remainder, if applicable, is called the base success value. It's important to note that 0 is a valid base success value. When it comes to base defense, each character has a base defense score. Base defense is mostly used for ranged attacks, but can be used when a defender is attacked in melee. If an attacker's base attack value is even lower than the base defense of a defender, the attack automatically misses without the defender needing to roll a defensive action. The defender may always select a defensive action instead of using their base defense, so long as they are able to defend. If the defender uses a defensive action, their defense is based on the result of their skill check instead of their base defense. If a defender is unable to make a defensive action, use the base defense as their base defense value unless stated otherwise. A defender may also choose not to take a defensive action. If they do not use a defensive action, use their base defense as their base defense value. Once the base success value is calculated, you add and subtract any post-roll modifiers to the base success value. This is called the total success value, or TSV. Post-roll modifiers are usually weapon damage, or WD, and armor reduction, also referred to as AR. Post-roll modifiers can never reduce the total success value below 0. So when it comes to combat, the process is quite simple. The attacker selects an action. The attacker makes a skill check. You determine hit location. You check base defense. The defender selects defense, that is, a defensive action, or using his passive base defense value. The defender makes a skill check if he chooses to do so. and you compare the base attack value and base defense value. Then you add post-roll modifiers, and that's it. And this concludes this part of the review. In the next part we are going to talk about ranged combat, wounds and injuries, and also mental combat. As you can see, combat in this universal RPG system is quite tactical, strategic, highly simulationist. If you thought that because it was a dice pool system it was going to lean more towards storytelling, instead this system offers many possibilities, options and maneuvers when it comes to the combat encounter. Thank you for watching this part of the review, and thank you for your likes and your comments. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know. And thank you so much to those of you that are going the extra mile to support the channel. If anyone else wishes to further support the channel, the information on how to do that will be in the description below. Once again, thank you, and see you later.